Welcome to another episode of Treasure Reef, and in today's video I will compare product lines of two aquarium companies, EcoTech Marine and Aqua Illumination. I have over 10 years of experience using both EcoTech and Aqua Illumination products, and I formed an opinion on both products, and sometimes I reach down for one and sometimes I pick the other product. First thing first, I am an Aqua Illumination ambassador, and I've been featured in a couple of ads as well as their signature series aquariums, where you can actually download the light schedule that I run. And if you want, you can go back a previous video where I go into details on what that light schedule is. Having said that, while I do sometimes get products to test on my aquarium and then I provide feedback, this video has not been sponsored, nor it would not be influenced in any way. In today's video, I will go in depth comparing both the current lighting by EcoTech and Aqua Illumination, as well as their flow equipment, which is power heads. But before we're going to go further with this, I'll talk about the overall similarities as well as differences. These were two separate companies, and while they merged in 2014, the Iowa-based Aqua Illumination and Pennsylvania-based EcoTech Marine have been producing their lights for quite some time. EcoTech came to fame with their famous Vortec power heads, but then they've also introduced the lighting, which were the lineup of Radion lights. And then at the same time, Aqua Illumination used to have several lights. One of them was Sol, but where they have gained huge recognition by the industry was their Hydra line. Since these companies started out separately and they had their own designing teams, their own engineering teams and software teams, you can see that the DNA of two companies can still be traced back to its origin. You can see that the aesthetics is quite different, just overall the look and feel, the materials, the type of aluminum that they use. I think it differs between Aqua Illumination and EcoTech, but also some of the software choices, the software aesthetics as well, and also just the connectivity was quite different. The EcoTech has used ReefLink, and only recently they've upgraded to a Mobius app, so you no longer need to have a hub, whereas the Aqua Illumination used to have something called a director, but I've never used a director, and I was always connecting to individual lights and were just always connecting using the My AI program. Back in the day, you could also use a website where you could connect to it. While I do like the My AI app by Aqua Illumination, I find it very easy to use, lightweight, and it just works. I also like where EcoTech is going right now with Mobius. Now, I do think that there have been some growing pains with Mobius. There have been a few issues, and I don't think it's still complete. There's still quite a few things that can be improved, and I do try to provide my feedback to EcoTech whenever I can on things that I think can be improved, since I use both applications daily. The EcoTech products appear to be a little bit more expensive, and for somebody who's just starting out with the hobby, I think it makes sense to definitely take a look at the Aqua Illumination series. Having said that, I've been running the Hydras on this tank, and I absolutely love them, and I don't ever feel that, you know, there's FOMO and I should have upgraded to Radions. I don't think of it this way. And that brings me to another point. If you look at any coral farm or a commercial facility, most of them use EcoTech products. So EcoTech products are more commercial. They I think, built to maybe withstand a little bit harsher environments. That's just the feel I get. They sometimes are thicker, more robust. What I can say though is Aqua Illumination products haven't really failed on me, other than a few times, but I don't find that one fails more than the other. So I think both are very reliable, and I haven't really had any major issues. Now, when it comes to customer service and quality and how the warranty works, I think now there's no real difference. You call EcoTech, and whether it's Aqua Illumination products or EcoTech products, I think you will get the same type of service. So in the event something goes wrong, I think it's great to have a company that stands by their products. What about similarities? So customer support, I think it's the same. The quality, you get what you pay for, and in both cases, because they are somewhat premium products, you get something that is nicely packaged, it's very well assembled, and it's a pleasure to use. It just works. Also, some of this aquarium is 3 years old, but some of my MP40s go back to probably 9-10 years, and hopefully they'll still continue working. So very, very good quality when it comes to that. Now, usability, I think, is another big factor, and both companies have spent a lot of time on R&D as well as the design process. They think meticulously about the user interface and user experience. Again, I think Mobius and EcoTech right now is definitely something that's going to be changing, and it's a new application. They've already done several versions of the app that differ quite significantly, and if you go back into my previous video, you'll actually see me go and talk about some of the new features in the Mobius app. Now we're going to go deeper into lighting. So on the aquarium behind me, I do run Hydra 64 HDs, and in my coral farm, I run Radeon XR30 Blue, latest generation, generation 5. And I've been using it for over a year on this tank with the Hydra 64 HDs. Before that, I was using 52 HDs. And I've kept numerous frag tanks in the past with different generations of Radians. So I'm very familiar, hands-on with both products. And I do use them interchangeably. Whenever I set up a new aquarium, I will reach for either one or the other. And I would never think that one will grow coral or color it differently than another. I think if you know what you're doing, you pretty much are guaranteed the results with both. So I've had experience with numerous generations. The point of this video is not to go and compare every one of those generations or even go really in depth on how this particular model compares to the Radeon model. I think you can look up at the specs and then you can decide what is good for you. I'm talking more about the general differences between the two lights. Both do grow and color coral. I've used Hydra on a frag tank and for 6 months, and then I would switch it to Radeon for 6 months, and I would not notice any significant differences. Whatever differences I would notice, I would attribute that to husbandry as well as just the water conditions, the type of coral, how well you dose, how quickly you can react to any changes, and how stable you can make a certain environment. You do, however, need to follow a certain baseline. So it can be picking an appropriate par, so you have to go for a certain par that's good for that particular coral that you're keeping. You also have to keep in mind the spread and make sure that that particular coral is getting that par. You also need to know that you have to commit to 8 or 10 or 12 hours and just stick with it. You can tweak the spectrum to whatever you think is appropriate. So, and you can learn from other reefers and just use other schedules that are successful. So obviously, if your schedule is a mess, if you are not using the right lighting, or if your other parameters are out of whack, if your nutrients are low, then you are not going to be able to keep good coloration or grow coral. And we all remember that in the past, when the first LED lights have come in, because you can tweak and customize so many settings in your aquarium, it was a lot harder to keep coral because people kept changing the spectrum, kept changing the time. And in my aquarium, for example, the light would be a couple of inches higher, or it would be a little bit off, and that would usually result in different coloration or growth or just health of the coral. Speaking of spectrum, one of the reasons I've picked Hydrus on this aquarium is I really like Aqua Illumination spectrum aesthetically. I think that the radiant lights, they have a lot more royal blue. And while a lot of people like royal blue, I personally not a big fan of it aesthetically. I 100% acknowledge that I think it's great for the coral, and you can really ignite the coral and give them all the good stuff that they need. However, I think that it colors your aquarium a little bit purplish, so it gives you that little tint, and I don't like it. So whenever I want to enjoy the coral, or just aquarium in general, I like less purple color. That's one of the reasons why I went with the blue radiance for my coral farm, is because they've introduced this teal color that helps me make the aquarium look a lot more like under the sea. So the latest generation of radiance definitely have improved upon this, but when I was making my decision, the Hydrus, and I still think that it gives me that metal halide look, crisp blue color with a tinge of white, and I absolutely love it. Another reason I've picked Hydrus on this aquarium is that there's a lot less light spill. So while this camera is located fairly low and we can see up here, and I have removed the visors just for this video, so there I actually use the visors to block off this light. But just in general, if I'm sitting down in front of an aquarium, that light doesn't actually hit me in the face. So I do like this a lot, and I think that the radiance have a little bit more of a spill, and there's definitely a little bit more in your face when you're sitting low and looking at the tank. Ideally, I don't want to have any light spill. So if I'm sitting down on the couch, I want to be able to just see the tank and not the lights, or not the light. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about using the visors. But I find that with Hydrus is definitely less spill, at least in my case. Now, on the other side of things though, the radiance give you, I find, more spread, especially the latest model. And that is one of the reasons why people like to use it in a farm, because you, with a single light, whether it's XR15 or XR30, you cover a lot wider range underneath you. So that basically is better bang for your buck. Having said that, I do find that the latest radiance result in less par. If you were to put a par meter right underneath the light, you will see that the par, or the maximum par, is a little bit lower, but it's more uniformly spread. So if you calculate the total par that is under the area that is being lit, I think it's still super, super high. And moving on to software. So while AI is using the older My AI application, which I see nothing wrong with, it's very easy to configure, and it's very responsive. The Mobius app is a different take on this. It has a few extra bells and whistles where you can have scenes, and I do like this a lot, where, for example, if I'm shooting this video and I want to change the light of my aquarium, in my AI I have to open up the app and then I can change my lighting, but there's no easy way to just press a button and change it to a certain color spectrum. Whereas with Radiance, I can just create a new button, virtual button there, and say, you know, change my lighting for the next 30 minutes to be a particular spectrum. So this is super awesome. And Mobius is definitely getting a lot of love lately, so I think that's forward thinking in terms of where things are. So I'm curious to compare it where we are going to be in 2022. Let's talk about the mounting system. And while I've had experience with at least 2 different mounting systems for hydras, I'm just talking about the actual rails, but also there's, you know, ability to hang it. I think the engineering-wise, the Radian mounting system is more advanced, it's more versatile, it's easier to configure, it's more robust, it's thicker, so it's definitely less, like it doesn't disappear in the background as this mounting system does, but it's obviously a little bit more cumbersome to configure, and I did run into a few limitations when I was using this mounting system. So it may depend on your particular use case. Moving on to sound, my hydras have been silent pretty much all the time. When I've upgraded to Hydra 64 HDs, I did notice some noise, but I think that was very quickly fixed with the latest firmware that they've upgraded or that they have released. And since then, I haven't really had any issues. So right now you cannot actually hear the light running. But once in a while, I think my hydras do kick in, and I don't really know what's causing it. I don't think it happens every day. So maybe there's certain conditions where software decides that it needs to cool it down. I think my Radiants are a little bit louder, but I don't have first-hand experience in listening to them in a quiet room as I do here. So my coral farm is in the basement right next to you know, lots of very loud equipment, so I don't really hear any Radiant lighting at all. So let's talk about prices. The Radiants are more expensive, but I think you have to look at it as a whole. There's many aspects that you have to consider, many factors, and depending on what's important to you, it may or may not be worth that particular premium. I don't think the price is that different, considering the cost of all other equipment and the coral and everything else. So while price is very important, I think the sound, the spectrum, the colors, the customizability, everything also has to be weighed in significantly when you're making that decision. Finally, I'll talk about when would I use a particular light. So if I'm setting up a tank with an open top, right now this is in my kitchen, I'm going for hydras probably 8 times out of 10. I think it's an amazing light. There's very little spill. It just floats in the air. It looks great aesthetically. I like the white color. It matches my stand, so that's awesome. If I would have a closed canopy, that would have been a tougher choice. I would strongly consider Radiance because I like the spread and I like the look of the tank under Radiance. As you've seen in my video with Dane, he is riding Radiance under the canopy, and his tank looks absolutely stunning. If I'm growing coral, probably 8 times out of 10, I'm going for Radiance. Just better spread, and it's also a gold standard when it comes to just set and forget. So I do like this a lot. You can look up schedules from Worldwide Corals or your friendly reefers, and because most people that grow coral now use radiance. Now let's talk about power heads. So for power heads, you have options when it comes to EcoTech Marine. You have MP10, MP40, MP60. I predominantly use MP40. I probably think that 80% of the cases are out there. Everybody's using MP40s. Unless you have a smaller tank, MP40 is something that everybody's going for. It's the best balance when it comes to the size of the puck, the flow. And unless you have a massive aquarium where you need MP60 or something more nano, MP40 is what most people I know use. When it comes to Aqua Illumination, you have Nero 5, which came out first, and then the smaller Nero 3. I wonder if there's going to be a Nero 7 at some point. I have no idea, but it would be cool to have a 3-to-3 comparison. When it comes to MP40s, and my understanding is that the EcoTech in general, when they came about, it was the patent that they've had for a system where you have a dry side, which is outside of the aquarium, and then the wet side that's inside of the aquarium. And so far, I think nobody else can do a similar design, so that's what stands them apart. It's a great design. You don't have any wires inside of your aquarium. There's less heat build-up inside of aquarium as well, and just in general, it looks great. So, and it's easy to configure and move around, and cleaning. Cleaning is amazing because you can, if you have a spare dry side, you just yank out the old one and put it in a vinegar bucket, and then put the clean one on, and you haven't skipped a bit. You cannot do that with any other power head. For Aqua Illumination Nero, you have to pick it up, you have to disassemble it, clean it, and only then you can bring it back. So that's a pretty big difference. When it comes to Nero though, you get something that's very lightweight. You can angle it differently, so this is pretty awesome. I sometimes use it, but also it's very inconspicuous. Like you can put it in a corner somewhere, you can put it, and as long as you don't mind that wire, you should be fine with the Nero. And Nero 5 really brings out a lot of flow. So it's an amazing puck that you can really target in a direction, and it hits very, very hard. Again, I'm not going to compare the flow stats here. That's not the point of today's video. However, a Nero 5 and Nero 3, they have thinner glass that is the maximum that it can be put on. That was one of the reasons it was the reason I didn't set up any Neros on this aquarium. I wanted to be all about Aqua Illumination, but my glass here is 3/4 of an inch, and there's Nero 5 won't work on such a thick glass. So MP40s, it is for me, and that's just where we are. When it comes to price, MP40s are more expensive than Neros, and you can get more Neros if you're setting up an aquarium than you can do with MP40s. But again, it's similar argument as with Radiance and with Hydras. You have to look at it as a whole, and if the ease of maintenance, how strong the flow is, all these other aspects are super important to you. That's the reason why many people use MP40s. If I'm setting up a coral farm, I'm probably going for an MP40 8 times out of 10. If I'm setting up a small frag tank though, 8 times out of 10, it's just going to be a Nero. When it comes to software, it's a similar argument as it is with MyAI versus Mobius. I think last time I checked with Mobius, you actually had more different modes for the flow. So for example, the gyre, I was able to do fancier things with my AI than with Mobius, but obviously that can change any day, so I wouldn't worry too much about something like that. Finally, let's talk about what would I use on a particular aquarium. So thickness, if thickness of the glass is important, you don't have an option, just go MP40 or MP60. If cleaning is very, very important and you want the least amount of maintenance, well, I think MP40s are a lot easier when it comes to that. But if I'm setting up a tank and I want to spend less money, I'd rather go with 2 Neros as opposed to 1 MP40. You can also angle it a little bit differently. So for a big aquarium, it would also be important whether I can see a power head and where is it in the picture. So sometimes I would put something on the back wall and I don't want to see a wire. So again, MP40 would win for me. However, for a frag tank, it's a little bit different. So in my frag tank, if I'm doing something in the bottom, then a lot of times a Nero would do a great job. Alright, so let's wrap up today's video with a conclusion. So both are great products, it's great software. At some point I hope that Aqua Illumination is going to move on to Mobius. Again, probably there should not be that many reasons why it can't in the long run, so hopefully there will be just one app to rule them all. And with both product lines, I think you're getting an amazing quality and amazing customer support. I will also prefer personally not to mix and match until they move on to Mobius. If I have an aquarium, I would rather have everything by one, that can be controlled by one application. So this is an exception to the rule, but most of the time I would, and I've explained why, but most of the time if I'm setting up a tank with radiance, I'd rather complement them with MP40s, so I can control it with one app. Same goes for, for my aquarium that is lit by hydras. Then if I can, I'll add Neros in there, because again, I have one application, I can launch it, I can quickly pause things, I can go into feed modes, I can do all of this stuff at the same time. So I like that consistency. So that wraps up today's video, and let me know what you think, whether I've missed anything, whether there's certain points that you disagree on, or if your experience with either EcoTech or Aqua Illumination has been different. I'm very curious to know. So thank you for watching, and see you next week on Sunday.